And you know what? Drop a like in the next 5 seconds, and I promise you'll get a win the next time you hop on Warzone. All right, what is happening? How's everybody doing today? My name is Chuck, and welcome back to a brand new video. So earlier this week, I hit you guys the top 5 classes used in Modern Warfare, but right now we're actually going to be doing a top 5 most overpowered guns to use here in Warzone. We all know there's been nerfs, to the DMR, to the Kilo, so on and so forth. So now we got to go over this. I seriously think there's going to be some new meta weapons coming out here, so I got all the info for you guys here within today's video. If you guys have not already, make sure you guys slap a like on this thing, subscribe with all notifications turned on so you not miss out on all my future videos. And with that being said, let's actually jump into this. Okay, so first thing is first here, we have to jump actually straight into this here, and this is actually the FFAR. This is what I do believe is actually going to be become a new meta weapon, just because it actually is like neck and neck with the Ram 7. It actually does beat it out at some different stuff. It actually has some pretty manageable recoil, kind of unlike the Ram 7 where it has like some interesting recoil. So let's actually jump into this here because we have a lot of attachments that are actually pretty good to use here. So let's go through it. Okay, so first thing first here, we actually have to jump into our muzzle category, and we're just going to go ahead and slap on the suppressor here for that sound suppression. Of course, you guys could definitely rock the last suppressor. I currently do not happen to have it unlocked just yet because I've been using my FFAR like a metric ass ton, so I actually just have the regular suppressor, and that'll be entirely fine for those of you guys that don't happen to have the last thing unlocked. This is a very, very good attachment. I mean, so it's going to do what it actually says. I know a lot of the Cold War attachments don't necessarily do exactly what they say, and we'll actually get to that here next. All right, so actually jumping to the barrel section here, the barrels and the foregrips usually on a lot of the Cold War assault rifles and SMGs and even like the tactical rifles don't necessarily do exactly what they're going to say. So like the Cavalry Lancer here will say vehicle damage, but in reality it'll actually do like bullet velocity and stuff like that. A bunch of my friends like J God have like tested this stuff out here, and so I should say that after talking to him, I was actually able to come up with that the 20.3 takedown barrel is actually going to be a very, very effective barrel to use here on the FFAR. So you guys should definitely go ahead and rock this one. There's a whole bunch of different like sort of weird things about this, and you almost have to look up these attachments just because I mean there's really no way to know that for whatever reason like the Cavalry could affect like your bullet velocity and your effective damage range or something like that, because it only says vehicle damage. Like who's going to run this in Warzone? Like I don't think anybody else really is going to. So I would go ahead and run the 20.3 takedown. This is a very solid barrel. For the underbarrel section, this is going to be another sort of instance where the underbarrel is not going to match up much like the barrels happen to. So you can use the regular foregrip, and that actually does work, but the field agent grip down here, which you would think is supposed to be the best one to be able to use for vertical and horizontal recoil control, it doesn't actually necessarily do as much as you would possibly think it would. In Cold War multiplayer, it actually works just fine, but in Warzone, a lot of people are actually running the bruiser grip, and this says melee quickness. And if you're like me, you're like, okay, I don't need any melee quickness out of my AR, so I'm just gonna stay away from that. This actually does help your vertical recoil control by like 10 to 15%, which is absolutely ridiculous. So you guys can run the bruiser grip on here and be fine. I would just test out the bruiser and the field agent or the regular foregrip to see what you like the best, but I'll tell you what, a lot of these stats are kind of false, and the bruiser grip actually does help with your vertical recoil controls. So that's kind of crazy. So I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this on here because it's actually pretty decent. For the ammunition, we're just actually gonna go and use the standard 50 round magazine. This actually gives me a lot of different ammunition here, or a lot of rounds in my magazine, but it actually doesn't slow me down too much. A lot of the Cold War guns actually have pretty decent reloads in Warzone, so you don't even necessarily need to run a speed mag if you were worried about like your aim down sights time and all that sort of stuff actually being more or less a con. Even with a standard 50 round magazine, it says there's a con for reload quickness, but this thing actually does reload fairly quickly in my opinion. So I've actually been doing pretty good here with this thing, and so I'd suggest either running this or the very last magazine you happen to get, which would be like the 50 round fast mag. So just go to run this until you have that, or even the 38 round speed mag if you're playing solos or something like that. 38 rounds in solos is definitely plenty enough to be able to take somebody out, but if you're playing stuff like duos, trios, quads, the 50 round magazine and above is getting what you want to run. And so for the last category here, we're actually going to be in the stock category, not necessarily in the rear grips, because if you actually go down to the rear grips here, even though I don't have all of them unlocked, this is another category of stuff that really doesn't do exactly what it's supposed to. So like the speed tape, like I think that can do what it's supposed to, but then also you have like your flinch resistance and all this stuff in here, which literally does nothing in Warzone. Like it really does not do absolutely anything, so you have to kind of almost disregard these attachments and go for something else like a stock. So we're actually just going to go ahead and throw on the CQB pad here for that spray to fire time. This only negatively affects your hip fire accuracy, which is really good. So I mean, that's actually pretty solid. If you feel like this is maybe a little bit too much, then maybe running something like the marathon stock, and that's going to be good as well. But for me, I've definitely tried out the CQB and the marathon, and it's actually both of them are pretty good. So definitely go to try both of them out to see what actually fits best for you. Cold War guns are kind of a bit of a crapshoot here, and you just really have to do a lot of in-game testing to see what is actually going to be the best here. But I'm going to go ahead and select the CQB pad, and this is my FFAR class setup. This could be a brand new meta weapon, so go to level this thing up. This is actually a really good gun. Okay, so next up I have to show you guys the MAC-10. Obviously the MAC-10 has basically been a meta SMG here for kind of a while. It basically competes with the MP5, though the Cold War MP5 I think can have a bit more of an advantage at some points. So people are starting to not run the MAC-10 and run the Cold War MP5. So we'll cover that here in a little bit. But for right now, this is actually a pretty interesting gun as well here, because it varies drastically from Cold War multiplayer into Warzone. Like, the thing kicks like a horse in Cold War multiplayer, but in Warzone it's kind of a laser. Okay, so jumping in the muzzle category, we're just actually gonna go down here and throw on the SOCOM Eliminator. And the reason we're actually not going to be running a agency suppressor here for that sound suppression, that damage range, this actually really negatively affects your aim down sight speed, like even more than what it actually should. It's kind of a little bit glitched. So of course, you know, the Cold War attachments are a little bit glitched. You kind of have to alter your class setup up and not run exactly what you would like. But we're running the SOCOM Eliminator here, and this thing is really good for that muzzle flash concealment, that vertical recoil control. This is going to make this gun even more of a laser, so you guys should definitely be good with the SOCOM Eliminator. And now for the barrel section here, we have a bunch of different options: the extended, the cavalry lance, the reinforced heavy, ranger, rifled, and the task force. But honestly, on this gun, you can actually go in and run the task force. This is actually a pretty good barrel here. Of course, it says it does negatively affect your starting ammo, vertical recoil control, and your horizontal. But honestly, I've been playing with this gun here for quite a while with this specific setup I'm showing you guys, and it has basically no recoil. So I don't really know what they're talking about here. Maybe this is another case of the attachments and not doing what they say. So like I said, once again, it's a bit of a crapshoot here, and you kind of have to do a little bit of testing. And I found this is actually really good. So run the task force. Frankly, we can actually skip right over the underbarrel section. We're not going to use an underbarrel at all. Like, this gun just literally does not require it for whatever reason. It just happens to not. So let's actually go down here, and we're going to run the standard 53 round drum magazine as opposed to the salvo 53 round fast mag. This actually does negatively affect your aim down sight speed a decent bit here. And actually, the standard 53 round drum mag, it says it negatively affects your quickness. But to be honest with you guys, if you've ever used this in game, this really does not have that like slow of a reload at all. So we're going to take, you know, all the benefits of having a large magazine without getting a bunch of the cons of having the fast mag on there. So I guess it kind of is one of those things where you guys can deal with the negative aim down sights time stuff, then you can definitely go ahead and run the salvo 53. But I'm running the Stagnag 53 round drum, and this thing's actually really good. It's what a lot of top players are actually running on their MAC-10s as well. So go ahead and run this. So the rear grip actually does, I think, what it's supposed to, and we're actually going to use the airborne elastic wrap here for the most amount of aim down sights time you could possibly get. I mean, granted, the flinch resistance kind of really doesn't do a heck of a lot, and you can also aim while going prone really anyways. So I guess if you really wanted to, you could definitely swap this out for a different attachment, but I really want that ADS time, especially because this is a close quarters gun, and this is, you know, what I'm trying to go for. So as an attachment, even just getting a single benefit out of it, it's definitely really good. So go and run the airborne elastic. Otherwise, you could definitely run something like maybe like the speed tape if you really only want to go for like something kind of bare bones and minimal. But if you happen to have the airborne elastic, go ahead and give it a shot. And last but definitely not least, here in the stock category, there's a few different stocks, and usually speaking, I don't run a stock on an SMG unless it's like the MP5 or something like that. We're actually gonna go down here and use the one that I really was not expecting to use, which is the SAS combat stock. And this is what a lot of people are running on their Warzone builds right now for that shooting moving speed and that aim while walking movement speed. This gun like really thrives, of course, when you're aim down sights here. And even though like you do happen to have this, you still get some pretty good awesome, like some pretty good hip fire, some pretty good awesome, I don't know what the heck I'm saying, but you have some pretty good hip fire accuracy even with this on here. So the SAS combat stock is actually pretty good. I was thinking that you probably should run the Raider stock, but I was told by a whole bunch of my friends that the SAS combat is indeed what everybody's going to be running. And so I was using this, and I was like, okay, you know, I can see why people are running this. This is really good. So this is my MAC-10 build here, a quite like very weird build, but it actually happens to work very well. Maybe until the Cold War attachments are like patched, then maybe we'll be able to alter them up a little bit. Another gun we have to take a look at is going to be the CR56 AMAX. This is what a lot of people are saying is going to be a very brand new meta weapon, or it was a meta weapon, then it got kind of phased out because the DMR, MAC-10, Cold War MP5, and then a lot of that stuff is getting nerfed. And then, you know, obviously, you know, the CR56 is making its way back into the meta. So this is kind of one of those guns that it's always been good, good, but it got a little bit more outclassed, obviously, because, you know, the DMR was dummy OP and they had to nerf it twice. But let's actually jump into this here. These attachments actually work right, so there's no guessing on these ones. So the muzzle, we're actually gonna go right down here to the very bottom for the mono suppressor, sound suppression, damage range. This thing is fantastic here. Mono suppressor, best suppressor in the game. No real like argument here. Just always run the mono no matter what. For our barrel, we have a few different options in here. We have the 8.3 Intruder, the XRK Zodiac, and the FSS 11.8 Squall. We're not going to be running any of this other BS stuff that makes it like an SMG. We're running the XRK Zodiac barrel. Damage range, bullet velocity, recoil control. That's what it's actually said, you know, what it's supposed to. It actually works very well, so go ahead and run this barrel 100% of the time. It is very, very good. For the underbarrel, a lot of people run between one or two different things here. The Commando foregrip, or if you can go down here, run the Ranger foregrip. For me personally, I'm going to be running the Ranger just because the AMAX has a little bit of that weird recoil, and especially with the sight I'm going to be putting on it here. I do want to have maximum recoil control, so I should say that the Ranger is going to be my foregrip of choice. So you guys should run the Ranger, try it out, and if you really feel like you can handle a lot more recoil or something like that, then go ahead and run the Commando or something like that. Or if you feel like you're accustomed to the Commando on the AMAX, and of course, go ahead and run that. It is down to personal preference here. There's not like it's going to be one, you know, you have to use this or your gun's going to be trashed. Like, you can use whatever you want, but for me, the Ranger foregrip is going to be what I'm using. Of course, this is Warzone, so we need a bigger magazine, and we only have really one option here, the 45 round magazine. No one's going to run this garbage magazine right here. This thing is absolute trash. Don't ever run it. So we're just here on the 45 round mag on this thing because it's actually well, the only one we got, frankly. And then last but definitely not least, we're actually going to be here in the optics section, and you guys can either run something like the Corp Combat Hollow Sight with maybe like a blue dot on there, or my personal favorite is going down here, run the VLK 3x optic. This is basically, you know, the Warzone standard of an optic. Super, super good. So if I was you guys, run the VLK. This is an amazing CR56 AMAX setup. I'm actually a big fan of this one. It's not the most mobile, but it definitely will take people out incredibly, incredibly fast. So this is going to be a top 5 video if I didn't at least show you guys the DMR 14. For whatever reason, even though it has been nerfed twice, it actually is still very, very good. So I mean, it's just kind of one of those things that it's just going to be really good here, and the people that actually can control the recoil now will be able to use this. Before is too much of a laser beam, and all the little Timmies out there that really suck at Warzone were able to beam you with it. Now they can't do that nearly as much. So if you are a decent player, can control the recoil, you can still use the DMR 14. So let's actually jump in this muzzle category. We're going straight down here for the silencer. Of course, I don't happen to have the last silencer unlocked, but a regular silencer is going to work just fine. I was absolutely beaming with this thing. Trust me, it's god tier. So I mean, you know, the regular silencers can work just fine for you guys. Throw that on there. For the barrel section, this is actually one of those categories that has some glitched attachments. So realistically, you're not going to want to use a lot of this other stuff in here. Basically, the 16.3 titanium barrel is going to be the best barrel possible to use on, you know, basically the tac rifles, any of the tac rifles, just because of the way it has actually been built. It just increases your bullet velocity and all that stuff, and it actually helps your fire rate. So, I mean, it kind of gives you like a 2-for-1, even though it says it only does your fire rate and you really don't see anything about bullet velocity or anything. You would think that using something like maybe the match grade would help out a little bit more, or the last barrel you happen to get, but no, it's the titanium barrel that's going to be the best one for you guys. So go to use a titanium. You're just going to thank me later. It is the best barrel to use on every single tac rifle in Warzone. For the underbarrel section here, there's a few different options. Obviously, you can use the regular front grip, or you can go down and use the regular field agent foregrip. I don't think any of these other attachments in here happen to be glitched at all. So you guys can definitely just use the regular front grip, which is what I've been using the entire time, because my DMR is not quite as leveled up as I'd like it to be, but I'm working it up there. I wasn't abusing it that too much here in Warzone. I wasn't actually playing a ton of Warzone during the DMR meta, just because of the DMR meta. So that being said, though, you guys can definitely use the regular front grip on here, and this will be fantastic until you happen to get the field agent one, and then you should definitely slap that on there, and that is going to be your go-to. But for me, right now, the front grip is what it is. For the ammunition side of things here, honestly, you're really not going to need much more than like a 30-round speed mag. I mean, that's really going to be about it. If you want to run maybe like the 40-round magazine, you could definitely do that. But honestly, 30 rounds is going to be pretty good, and a lot of the top Warzone players are not running anything absolutely ridiculous, like, you know, any of the last magazines there. They're just running like a 30-round speed mag, even like the regular 30-round magazine. I mean, it's absolutely fine. I mean, this thing actually reloads decently fast anyways. So, I mean, if you can get your reload off even a little bit faster, 30-round speed mag, that's going to be amazing. But if I was you guys, run a 30-round speed mag, try it out, see how it is. it's pretty good. And last but definitely not least here, for our final attachment on the DMR-14, we're going to be using a sight, and we're actually going to go ahead and use the axle arms 3 times. This is going to be the best magnification sight to be able to use. Some people like using the Vision Tech. I use the Vision Tech in Cold War multiplayer, but if I'm playing Warzone, I'm going to be using the axle arms 3 times. This is going to be the best sight to use for the DMR-14. This is what a lot of people are beaming with, so if you've always wondered what it is, it's the axle arms 3 times, and this is a fantastic build for the DMR-14. This thing is an absolute tank, and it just absolutely destroys people still. 2 nerfs later. And last but definitely not least here, we have to show you guys the Cold War MP5, not the Modern Warfare MP5, but the Cold War MP5, because these are basically between this and the MAC-10 are like the top 2 SMGs to use here in the entirety of Cold War Warzone. So let's actually jump in this muzzle category. We're gonna go straight down here for the agency suppressor. This thing actually is like pretty good on this thing. I've actually used it a decent amount. If you'd really like to not have any of the negative cons of like the aim down sight speed, you can definitely run the SOCOM eliminator. This will give you a little bit less, but honestly, the agency suppressor for me has actually worked out just fine, and it keeps me, of course, off the radar, which is definitely something I like, which on my MAC-10 build, because you have the SOCOM eliminator, you will be showing up on the radar a little bit, so it's kind of one of those things you can definitely switch back and forth between the two. This will not make or break the build at all, so I'm going to use the agency suppressor for this one. For the barrel, we're actually going to go straight down to the very bottom and use the 9.5 task force. This actually works very well in Warzone for the damage, that effective damage range, and bullet velocity. Of course, this is more or less your secondary, so it's not going to be like super big on like, you know, your effective damage range, but of course, having more effective damage range is always good, so going to use the 9.5 task force. For the underbarrel, these actually work pretty good for the SMGs, so they're not glitched out, so you can run the regular field agent grip and you'll be perfectly fine here. Vertical recoil control, horizontal recoil control, you'll be fine here. Go ahead and run this. This is phenomenal, so I like it, run it. For the ammunition side of things here, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. A lot of pro players and like really good players are running the Stagnag 50 round drum mag as opposed to the Salvo 50 round fast mag, but it kind of comes down to your personal preference here. Personally, I've ran the Stagnag and I've also run the Salvo 50 rounds, so I mean, it's just kind of one of those things, like, do you want that faster reload at the expense of aim down sights time, or do you want to run, you know, the Stagnag 50 round drum mag and have a little bit slower reload but don't really have any of that sort of, you know, negative, you know, effects there. So it's just kind of like one of those things that you could definitely run either or, but personally I'm gonna run the Stagnag 50 round drum as this works very well for me. So if I was you guys, I'd go ahead and run this. And last but definitely not least here, for this, we're actually gonna go ahead and throw in the airborne elastic wrap down at the very bottom. Aim down sights time, flinch resistance, aim while going prone. Basically you only get the aim down sights time benefit here, but to be honest, that's definitely more than enough. So we're gonna go ahead and run that, and that's gonna conclude out my MP5 build here. This is amazing, and you guys should 100% for sure run this. This is a very, very good SMG to run in Warzone. That's all I got for you guys here in today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, slap a like on it, subscribe, those notifications turn on. Make sure you guys comment down in the comment section below. And with that being said, I'll see you guys back here again tomorrow with a brand new video. Just run out, triple cap, don't be Randy, and I'm out. Peace.